Botz-Bornstein, wahrscheinlich in Deutschland bestellt ist, etwas.
The fun session, relax, you will see a lot of pictures, it's good for the afternoon. So I try to fit it all into 20 minutes afterwards. If not, you just hold up in 5 minutes, time or 10 minutes. I think, right? No, I take it seriously. Stick to the time frame. So I'm not a sinologist, I'm not a specialist of Darwinism, so I thought I decided finally the best thing to do is to tell you something about what painters, Western painters, are doing, resembles certain Taoist paradigms, and hoping that that way I can tell you something that you don't know yet. My paradigm is, I start with that in China and Japan, the aesthetics of calligraphy has been imported into painting. That has been said many times. In landscape paintings, we have straight lines, which is surprising because of the depicts architecture, but the lines, they are sweeping, they are fluid, curves, dynamic composition, which is more important than columns. So already long time ago, as has been said many times, by Westerners, the Chinese, they are not, even when they are painting, they are drawing, so calligraphy is associated with painting, they are writing when they are painting. Simon Leys has said that. Now, what does that mean? What is happening more precisely? There's what is wrong. He said the lines are first reduced to strokes and then put together again. Now that is the idea that I want to follow up. If you look at this from northern Sung, I don't know how specialized people are, some of you might know better than me. They use ancient calligraphic formulas that enable them to achieve a certain simplicity of expression. And I think this reduction of the line to strokes, or to traits, and then the subsequent Rick configuration, I think it surmounts these two options that Western art has always had, which is that we have either realism or idealism. And this is what I want to explain. Now, there are Western painters who really were into calligraphy, and the most obvious example would be this, Henri Michaux, if you know him. So, in general, there is no equivalent in the West with what I've just said, but here we have an obvious example. He uses characters in his painting, and he calls these pictograms traits. And he says many elements are deconstructed and later reconstructed by fragments, as one does in algebra, so exactly like what this was once said about Chinese calligraphy. So it has fundamental consequences for the relationship between painting and reality. But then Michaux is not such a unique case. He fits into another one here. Also Michaux, so you see what he's doing. But he fits into, well, we are looking at a few Michaux. Other abstract painters in general, abstract painting is in the West about lines, drawing lines. Now, in which way can we call that calligraphy? Is it still related to calligraphy? In Michaux's case, it's very obvious, but if you look at Henri Michaux, Dubuffet, Jackson Pollock, Per Ashinsky, he's on the Michaux, Dubuffet, it's all lines. What is happening here? Can we understand that through calligraphy, and then in particular through some Taoist paradigms? The aim is here, why are they doing it? Certainly that the gestures of the painter become more immediate, more intimate. So that is what also happens in Eastern calligraphy. Michaux really said that he became a painter very late in his life. I think he was 38, but he's a poet. that he started painting by abandoning himself to the line, but let himself guide by the line and just let it run, let it establish itself. He always says that he unmakes, he makes and unmakes, he invests and divests. Michaux, exactly what we do in drawing. You see, when we draw something, we do not imagine first what we want to draw, but just start drawing, and then it becomes something. The drawing itself is a thinking process. Much has been said about that. And then we correct and we change. So there's always this idea of investing and divesting. And this is why in the West, in the 20th century, Chinese and Japanese characters, I just say, do not say just now calligraphy, but the characters, Japanese and Chinese characters, they have become interesting for some Western writers and philosophers. You know, Victor Ségalin, Claudel, Roland Barthes, they were interested in that. Now, Michaux's approach is still quite unique. This resembles ideograms, characters, but he says that he's not interested in ideograms at all. Why? Because an ideogram is static. It cannot be changed. Other people want to copy it. You cannot do whatever you want. So this is why he calls these characters, he calls them traits, traits. And they are not characters. Now it sounds a bit as a rejection of Chinese calligraphy, but it's not really, because he reduces the calligraphy to a sort of abstract painting. He's not interested in symbols, but he's still very much interested in lines and in writing. One consequence is that here it shifts from the symbolic to the bodily gesture. He's not interested in abstraction. You would think that this is an abstract painting like the others, but he thinks that just in Chinese painting it has become too abstract because it means something. The best thing that you can draw is something that is not supposed to mean something. You have to empty it of meaning, otherwise the naivety and the spontaneity is getting lost. So you have to dissociate the sign from the thing that it signifies. So then the signs, they can become movement much better. Well, it's calligraphy too, but he thinks he makes it better. So it's not the sign that expresses a real movement like in futurism, in futurist paintings. They try to paint the racing car. They put all these lines, also lines, they call it lines of force. They really try to paint the speed. Now here, that's not what is happening. The speed is in the lines, the movement is in the lines. So it is not what a photography can show. He says that, Michaux said, I want to show not movement as it can be seen in photography, but rather the initial essential movement that one can find, even when one is blindfolded. So even if you close your eyes, you can still feel the force of these characters. So the stroke is the basic element here. But again, it's not that strokes are put together in order to create a sign. He starts more with something else. He starts with a sign and then shortens it and becomes flatter and more horizontal until you have only a stroke. And that is then this body view. There was a ballet group who tried to recreate these signs by Michaux. With real people, which is, you would say, that was not his initial intention. You just want not that, but still, it's interesting that somebody has tried that. So the line is an event. It's a state of mind that is expressed through a bodily posture. So it's a very personal way of recovering fundamental principle of East Asian calligraphy. Okakura has said each stroke of the brush contains in itself its principle of life and death. Now we could say that Michaux was really taking this seriously. The line is a gesture, a little bit like Wittgenstein's gesture as a Lenin's form. There's something else I wanted to show you, Alain, you know, the French philosopher, he calls himself Alain. He was interested in texts, but just in the things that are written on the words when somebody is correcting. He said that is much more interesting than the text itself. And he said this very early, 60 years before Michaux, because there is something like a dance, like gestures and dancing in it. All these arrows and strike-throughs that we are now today, we no longer make it. We just write on the computer. And he thinks this is really the real beauty. This is the real beauty of a manuscript. The lines are here more physical than the regular letters, and they also have a memory. So the bodily gestures, they are important for calligraphy, calligraphers. They were important for Western painters in drawing, but not in painting. Leonardo da Vinci talks about that drawing is bodily movement, gestures, but not in painting. But you see that here comes then something else. Now the next person who you think are drawing lines, but I will tell you these are not lines. Is Mondrian. Well, first of all, these are not lines. He insisted very much on that. He's not drawing lines, he's drawing fields that have boundaries. You see already the idea of negation that is coming in here. Mondrian was very interested in Taoism. He read a little bit disordered, a lot of almost New Age, a lot of philosophy and pseudo-philosophy coming in, but still he had this idea of emptiness and negation and refers to Taoism. He wants to be these lines a kind of natural automatism that has overcome nature and is not just automatic. The lines produce themselves like nature, but they are not nature. So you see something very essential. He's certainly one of the most abstract painters ever, because he denies objects an individual quality. He has only straight lines, but still say, I mean, these are lines, but these are no, they're not lines. Then there are, this also maybe has the idea from Taoist, he talks about colors and non-colors. So the non-colors is gray and black and white. And then you see very essential, you see that only if you go to a museum and look at it, the line stops here. The line does not go to the end of the painting. And if you look at the real painting, you see that the paint is brittle, that this is really a painting. It is not a drawing, he did not cut with a ruler. People think that he was doing that, but he was really painting. And the whole construction hangs in the air on the canvas because the lines do not go through. So again, painterly elements are limited to straight colors. So he ends up with a sort of spiritualized line. That's what he wants. He sees lines in terms of energy and elemental forces. They are not rationally constructed. They are not intellectually constructed. Now, parallel with calligraphy is obvious. This emptiness, the negation. He talks about the negative line. So the negative line is the result of destruction of everything that is material. That has first to be destructed. And when everything is destroyed, then we can feel the rhythm of the line. I think of the butcher's line in Taoism, which is just a line, because it's not a line. So there is this idea of the empty, of a non-line. Somebody said that Mondrian's approach is the destruction of representation and of form, and then that is what remains. So the line is emptied out, like in Chinese calligraphy, but it does not lead to a culturally empty line like a computer-drawn line. It is still a cultural line. It is even a bodily line. This is a big paradox. it remains a bodily action in real space. And I think this is the reason why he doesn't draw the line through. So it is not a thing, and it's not an image, but it's just an event that takes place that transcends empirical being and imagination. Okay. I go to the next painter. Well, show you this. The force. We have to talk about time and space. So there's something that takes place in time and in space. The force of time can be felt in the spatial extension of the line. Eastern calligraphers, I'll read you a sentence and then later I'll tell you who said it. So let's say Eastern calligraphers, they do not describe the exterior aspects of the world, but they grasp the internal principles structuring all things and link them to other things. Now, to tell you the truth, this was not Eastern calligrapher who said it. This was Michel Serres, the French philosopher of science, who said that when he saw a painting by Kandinsky. You see the similarity. And Kandinsky talks much in his book, the spiritual art in art, and how geometrical compositions contain inner non-material forces. The circle is trying to expand itself. You can feel it. The plane is related to a straight line, or the straight line wants to become a plane, or something like that. You always feel some non-material force in it, and he wants to express this. So the line is not only spatial; it's also temporal. Already because we follow the line when we are watching the line, seeing the line, we follow the line in time. So temporal dimension. Well, that's we know all this from calligraphy. The calligrapher says very much that when you have to stop, when you have to go up again, it's all linked to time. So these lines, calligraphy lines, or these lines by modern painters, they develop organically and not as fixed entities. There are tensions in the line. Another one, the last one, Paul Klee, you see lines. This one is very famous. Another one is similar, but let's take this. Now it looks like a perspective study of a room, but it's not. Because you see, he's doing something very strange. He's painting. He put something circular around. You would never do that in a perspective study. The result is that the lines become destabilized. That the whole thing seems to be dynamic. It seems to be dancing, or like Michaux said, the line is going for a walk. The lines that show what is there, but they are brought into movement. So it becomes more and more clear. At some point, he becomes more and more purist, economical. But then he is superposing, interlinking planes by bringing lines into movement with a circular perspective. He talks about the stray center. It's an interesting concept. The stray viewpoint. The stray line, irregular composition, multiple unified center. So the Mehreinige, the unity. There's unity, but there are many unities, but somehow they work together and create something. Now, okay, Chinese landscape paintings, they do the same. They challenge the traditional sense of space. The space is not uniform. The elements rarely fall into line. It's more by Klee. You see how it's that's smaller. This is the same, but I show you the detail. Now this floating space, the perspective that is off center that destroys this perspective that we had since the Renaissance. There is a perspective, but this perspective is only apparent. It's very reminiscent of, it's also very, but it's reminiscent of Escher. What Escher did in 1947 in architectural drawings. This is also architecture, or then 18th century Carceri by Piranesi, where we have an incoherence of space, deception, levitation, vertigo, sense of wonderment. I guess that is the idea. So I have shown that the difference between traits and lines, and then the replacement of lines by traits has led to similar conclusions in East Asian calligraphy, but also in some Western painters. If it was intentional or if it was a coincidence, that it can never be found out. We don't know exactly what influences they had, what they were reading. But we have lines that are aesthetic and stylistic, but that are not imitated, that are not imagined, but they are sort of ideal forms that will be revealed through a hermeneutic process, through a confrontation of something single in a bigger context, which became very clear in the last picture by Klee. One looks at a certain situatedness within a larger whole, and Western culture, through all history, most of the time they preserved the dimension of the line in relation to the surface. First it was flat, then it became three-dimensional, but it was always preserved. But in Chinese painting and in these painters, we have parallel rectangles, we have parallel right lines. The primacy of the viewpoint is abolished, there is no depth. All these things that Westerners found very strange when they first saw the Chinese and Japanese paintings. So I hope I wanted to show that some Western painters are Chinese in some way. Thank you.
So I will ask questions. The first one so many. Sure. Okay. Yeah. Do you so you agree that most of the modern Western paintings are not inspired by Chinese paintings or Chinese calligraphy? Just you find some similarities.
I'm not a biographer, and maybe it's always boring thing that people say that Ibsen was writing this play and they really had a mate who came from Germany or something. That doesn't really help you to understand. So maybe they read something about calligraphy, probably because it was around. It can be a coincidence. It can be something. So in Mondrian, we read in his diaries. There's so much on Taoism. There, it's clear. The others, it's clear. I don't know. Things can have been invented twice in two different places, independently, but maybe not entirely independently. So I cannot decide.
Okay.
Questions? Yes.
Do you have any evidence to prove this kind of influence from Chinese art on this Western, the contemporary attempt?
Yeah, well, it's the same question. I'm not an art historian. Otherwise, I would write a book about influence. I'm just interested in the philosophy because I think through this comparison I can show something, some transcultural truth that comes out of this comparison. I think that's what comparative philosophy is about. That when you compare, you know more than when you knew culture A and culture B, because now you have C, which is not A and not B, but it's C, it's something new. So that's why I'm doing it, and not because I'm interested in the historical facts that would require a completely different study. Of course, if I would write a book about that, then I would do it maybe on the side, put a chapter into it, and go to the library and read on it. Now I haven't done it.
Short. Very short.
So, yeah, I'm not going to ask the same question again, but but I am going to ask a question. I'm trying to relate it to Jana's talk because I thought one of the things you could say is, we didn't really have an example of what she was talking about, sublation. But would you say the Chinese perspective has now been sublated into these?
Yeah, that's what I was just saying. For me, transcultural is we have A, B, and then C is not African American culture. It is really not African. I mean, it's so different from African music, but it's not American. If you take the original American music, so what is it? Well, it's C. That means it's something completely new. So this is transcultural. Here we would have the same thing.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.